Hello guys, my name is Bibil. You can call me Bibil. Now I want to tell you about stories Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Once upon a time, in a faraway palace, there lived a beautiful princess. She was very pretty, with blue eyes and long black hair. Her skin was smooth and white, so she was called Snow White. Snow White has a stepmother who was always jealous with her beauty, while her father has passed away. Her stepmother was cruel. She had a magic mirror that could say who was the most beautiful woman in the country. One day, her stepmother asked the magic mirror that which woman was the most beautiful in the country. The magic mirror answered that Snow White was the most beautiful woman. Her stepmother was very angry, then asked her servant to get rid of Snow White from this kingdom. The servant was asked to kill Snow White in the woods, but the servant didn't do it. He just took Snow White into the wood and left her alone. But her stepmother didn't know that Snow White was still alive. In the forest, Snow White was alone and scared. She didn't know where she should go. Suddenly, she saw a quaint little cottage. She wondered who lived there and then she decided to get into the house. In the house, she saw seven small beds and a kitchen. Snow White cleaned up the house such as washing clothes, cleaned the bed, and others. After working so hard, she went to the bed and slept there. In the afternoon, the seven dwarfs who lived in the cottage went home. They were surprised to see there was a young woman there. One of them waked her up and asked who she was. Snow White told them her sad story. The seven dwarfs felt pity on Snow White, and they asked her to stay with them in the house. While in the palace, the stepmother asked the magic mirror once again who the most beautiful woman in the kingdom was. The magic mirror answered that Snow White was still alive and lived in a small house with the seven dwarfs. She was still the most beautiful woman in the world. The stepmother was angry and she planned something bad for Snow White. Then, stepmother disguised herself as an old woman who sold poison apple and went to the dwarf house. Before the seven dwarfs went to work, they warned Snow White not to open the door to strangers. When her stepmother arrived to the house, she began offering Snow White apple. Snow White refused to open the door, but her stepmother forced her. Snow White felt sorry to her and opened the door. She took the apple from her mother and ate it. After eating the poison apple, she fainted and fell to the ground with the apple poison on her side. In the evening, when the seven dwarfs came home, they were surprised to see Snow White lying on her floor with a pale face and a poison apple beside her. The seven dwarfs were sad to see Snow White was dying, but she did not die. Then the seven dwarfs decided to make a beautiful bed made of crystal to make Snow White still alive. Day by day, the seven dwarfs were waiting for a miracle to come so that Snow White could get back from her fame. Then one day, there was a traveler who was actually a prince of another kingdom that was so far. He saw a beautiful woman laid on a bed of crystal. The prince also asked what happened to the girl to the dwarf. Then the dwarf told him what had happened to Snow White. Hearing the story, the prince was so sad. He was coming closer to Snow White, He felt sorry and kissed her. Suddenly, Snow White came to. The curse was broken by the prince's kiss. The dwarfs were so happy. Then the prince asked Snow White to come to his palace and marry her. Finally, they lived happily ever after. The end. Thank you for your attention to listen my stories. Bye bye.